everyone, and welcome to the most recent episode of the Read Right to Left podcast. I am G from Simply G, joined by my always wonderful co-host, Ray from Whimsical Pictures.
Hello, everybody.
And this month is December. It's the end of the year, the end of this hell year that has been 2020. But...
This century...
Yeah, it certainly felt like it. But despite that, we have had so many manga series, new manga series coming out. It feels like more than ever before. Really, it's been a terrible year just generally, but for manga, it's been a great year. So much.
It feels like somebody in the industry was like, oh man, I really hope that we get a lot of good manga next year, and then the monkey paw just curled a finger.
Yeah. There are so many titles. And so, for this month, like we did with last year, we are going to be talking about our top 5 favorite series from the past year, from 2020. Stuff that debuted this year all of our titles are print debuts. We will be talking about some titles that we had read previously digitally, but got their print release this year, although they won't be in our top 5. It'll be more so of a mention, because there's honestly so many titles, so much stuff we're going to be talking about that we are spoilt for choice as manga fans. And regardless of genre, regardless of demographic, there really was something for everyone that came out this year.
It was so much. Only thing to get me through the year, to be honest.
I mean, entertainment as escapism has never been more necessary than over the past several months. And that's putting it mildly.
Especially for everyone locked in their houses.
Yeah.
Well, anyway.
So, whilst we are going to be talking about 5 titles each, I think like we did last year, this year we're trying to avoid more crossover than necessary. I think regular listeners know that Ray and I have very similar tastes. So if we were just left to our own devices, we would have very, 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 very similar lists in where we'd only be talking about maybe 6, 7 titles in all. This year or this month, we're going to be focusing on 10 separate titles. But of course, there's going to be a lot of overlap. There's going to be a lot of overlap in opinion and enjoyment. And again, it's coming from a year where there was just so much good stuff coming out. So for a lot of these titles, they're not lesser than anything else just because it wouldn't inherently be on, for me, like my top 5, but just because it's already been mentioned by Ray. But in the top 10, heck yes. These series are going to be on there.
Even if you get into, like, the lower part of, like, my own top 5, it's like, I could have put any number of things in there, and it would have been just as accurate, to be honest.
Yeah. So, with such an incredible year of manga in 2020, I think we're actually going to be mixing it up a little bit. I mean, it's the end of the year. Why not go a little bit crazy? We're going to be talking about each of our, like, number 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 individually, discuss them as we tend to do these lists, but thanks to all of the wonderful questions that you guys always send in, we are going to be intersplicing your questions between each of our entries, just because I think it'll help, break it up a little bit. We also have some titles from very good friends of the shows with their favorite series that came out this year. I hope you guys enjoy. It is a little bit different. And I think we should take it from there.
All right, and speaking of questions, I think we're actually going to start with a couple from the wonderful, lovely at Storied Shelves.
So, Stories on Shelves at Storied Shelves on Twitter asks, what were some of your unexpected favorites from this year's releases, and what are some titles you're hoping are picked up in the future?
Okay, so unexpected favorites. Do you want to start?
I have two that are on my list, so I'm going to withhold them for now, but I also I was very pleasantly surprised with a lot of the stuff that I read this year. Actually, I had three that are on my list. This has been a good year. Let's just put it that way. But I never go into a series expecting to dislike it inherently. But there are some titles that I obviously have higher expectations for compared to others. And if those high expectations can be just blown away, then that's really a sign of quality, or at least enjoyment for me. And one that isn't in my finalized list, but is incredibly good, is incredibly my thing, very plays into my tastes impeccably, is the recently finished as well. So I need to get on reading those last 2 volumes, but the recently completed 3-volume series Goodbye My Rose Garden, which is a historical romance yuri about a Japanese woman who moves to England during the Victorian period because she has been inspired to become a novelist by her favorite writer. She wants to move there to meet her favorite writer, etc., to follow her dream. But despite kind of hitting a roadblock, not knowing anyone there, and her publishing career not doing too well, she is offered a job by the beautiful young woman Alice, who is a lady of high standing within the English society, high society. And there, she asks if she wants this young Japanese woman to be her personal maid, basically, and later asks her if she would help her die, because what we discover is that Alice is a lesbian, and it's kind of an open secret that she is. There's a lot of rumors amongst, a lot of rumors, a lot of gossip, and because of the time period, because of the setting, because of her position, that has caused a lot of strife for her. She feels very much like she, if she can't be happy in herself and she can't live up to the expectations of her family and her station, then she is happier to die, basically. And it's about the relationship between these two, and how prejudice, obviously homophobia, within this society, and I mean current society, but within this particular society, affects those who, are within these communities. And also from our main character, how her perception on love doesn't give her those prejudices, and obviously realizing her own feelings for this woman that she's working for or attending to. It's super good. It's really, really good. I love it. And why did nobody tell me to read it sooner is all I gotta say. I'd heard nothing but good things, but nobody was like, you need to read this because we know you like historical fiction, romance, and of course Yuri. Like, it was made for me, guys. It was made for me. I loved it so much.
For some reason, I didn't realize this was a manga and not a light novel.
Oh.
So that's like the only reason I hadn't gotten to it yet. But yeah, it's on my list. For me, I guess the biggest surprise is, like you, it's on my list, so I'm going to wait on that one But another one that surprised me, and I think this will surprise people because it was one of the most, like, highly anticipated releases, is actually A Man and His Cat. I don't tend to care for these, like, cute, like, animal manga.
Yeah. Falls into the cute kid
I just
manga
feel like
spectrum that
yeah. Well, sometimes it's more like I end up for things that are just sweet. I feel like I'd rather be watching a compilation of, like,
cute cat videos.
I don't know, puppy videos on YouTube. I don't end up walking away from those volumes feeling like I've gotten my $15 or whatever out of it. I'm like, oh, well, that was cute, I guess. You know?
Yeah.
Because I'm empty inside, you see. But A Man and His Cat, it reached into my cold black heart and brought color to it. Yeah, I was sobbing from the very first page. So
it is very cute.
I pretty much spent the entire first volume just, like, in tears. There's just something about, like, you know, this kind of lonely older gentleman going to find companionship in this cat and going to the pet store, and there's just this ugly fat cat there in the back of the pet store who has completely given up on finding his forever home because nobody likes him and they always take the young, cute kittens and not his ugly, fat face. And this man just sees him and immediately falls in love and says, I need to have that one. And Fukumari just starts crying because nobody's ever loved him before. And
me crying right now.
Exactly. It's like just him, like, in the pet store when that old man comes and is like, I want that one. I'm gonna cry right here. Yeah, I didn't expect to have such a strong emotional response to that one, but just, like, I don't know, I'm someone who loves, like, Fruits Basket and Natsume's Book of Friends. Like, if you give me something that's, like, cute, but it has a touch of melancholy to it, I am done. I'm over. Like,
yeah.
Yeah. So, that was one that is from a genre that I don't typically pick up, because it's, like, you know, comes from a webcomic, seems to be just cute and nothing else, but, like, everyone kept saying, like, oh, this made me feel so many things. I cried, so I picked it up, and also cried. So I guess that counts as, like, a surprise. Because I am continuing with that series, because I was moved by this little ugly cat. That puppet they made for the show is cursed.
Yeah. It's pretty...
Why did they do that?
Pretty, yeah, not...
I really wanted them to just find, like, an ugly shelter cat and rescue it for the show, but no, of course not.
No. We can't have things make sense.
Nice things. Yeah. It's not even, like, a cute CG mascot character, like a Pokemon or something. They were like, no, we really need a hideous puppet for this.
Yeah.
I just want to be in the meeting where they made that decision. But yeah, that's cute. What was the other question?
What are some titles you're hoping are picked up in the future? Honestly, my answer to this is a lot of, like, continuations of stuff we've seen earlier volumes for. I mean, we did get Kageki Shoujo just recently licensed. I'd like to hope, like, I would hope that we see more from the Classmates universe, as it were, the continuation of those series or stories, because I like those characters, the main couple at least, so that would be nice. And I'm trying to think if anything immediately jumps out at me aside from that, but I can't really, I'm not obviously that tuned into what is available on the Japanese side, because I don't read a lot of, stuff that isn't already available in some capacity. So, yeah, I mean, aside from that, I would pay a lot of money for print editions for a lot of Furukiya's catalog. But aside from that, there's nothing too, like, obvious that I don't know or am not aware of that I can think of, at least as for right now.
In terms of things that I consider, like, realistic, because my real answer is I want Kaze Toki no Uta, and I will always want Kaze Toki no Uta, and I will die wanting Kaze Toki no Uta. But for realistic stuff, I'd like to see more Akiko Morishima. The one that I'd like to see is Renai Joshika, which is, it's like a Eurytopia, but it takes place in an office, and it's full of office ladies in love. It's interconnected short stories. It's only 2 volumes long, and some of the short stories interconnect with some of the short stories in the Conditions of Paradise trilogy that we're getting. So I see that as a fairly reasonable next step on that front from Seven Seas. I also would really like The Blue Eyes of Horus. It's going to be wrapping up with Volume 9, so it's not that overwhelmingly long. And I think it does fit into this sort of mini trend of Harta series slash historical fiction, strong female leads. I think it's touching on a lot of things that people want to read right now.
Yeah.
And it's also just incredibly good. And it's about Hatshepsut, who is one of my favorite historical figures of all time. So, yeah, that one.
Yeah. Second that, absolutely. Also, if we're talking relicensing and light novels at least, I am praying every day for 12 Kingdoms, because I feel like
12 Kingdoms.
One day we will see that be relicensed. J-Novel, I am pinning my hopes and dreams on you. You have so many titles currently, and I know you're not afraid of female-led fantasy series. So, please. And you all have also relicensed Tokyo Pop light novels in the past. So, this is me just making it known that I would buy your books immediately.
Seven Seas has also done both of those things lately.
Yes.
I'm looking at both of you, watching, staring,
from a respectful distance. But just know, I'm ready. Yes. You know what else I'd like? Actually, thinking about it, I like Kids on the Slope. Like, it's never going to happen, but I really like that series. Especially if we're getting we're getting jazz manga right now with Blue Giant. And, I mean, again, like you said, historical, I mean, it's modern historical, but historical manga seem to be hitting its stride recently. And
Musical BL.
Yes. I would pay for that. Please.
I would also, we've been getting some Kaori Ozaki. I would, speaking of Tokyo Pop relicenses, I would kill for Immortal Rain to get relicensed and finished. That would be nice.
Yes, an obligatory shonen flag as well. Shonen note. I'm getting blue flag and shonen note merged, but you know what I mean.
Shonen note. Oh my god, I want shonen notes so bad. I mean, I've already read it. I just want to throw it at people. I want G to read it.
Yeah, G wants to read it. Is like.
Oh, you know what I want? Mm-hmm. Now that I'm looking at my books. I want, I keep talking about this because I feel like it's another one, like Blue Eyes of Horus, that fits into so many trends that are happening right now, is, Colette Decides to Die.
Oh, yeah.
This one's long, so it's a long shot, but, like, same magazine as Snow White with the red hair, and similar vibe.
And that's long, so similar like it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Yona, you know, Snow White with the red hair. We're getting a bunch of like strong female-led, longer Hanato Yume series, and I want Colette Decides to Die. It also fits into the Ancient Magus Bride trend of like, you know, girl meets ancient supernatural creature and falls in love with him. In this case, it's Hades, god of the underworld. And it's just really sweet. The girl is Colette, obviously. She's an herbalist in like her little mountain town, and the story kind of alternates between like her doing her herbalist job and like joining Hades and having adventures with other figures from Greek mythology, and just like them chilling together in the underworld with all the little underworld servants. Of course, he's got his 3 little dogs, Caro, Beru, and Sue, because they're Kerberos. Yeah, it's wonderful and lovely, and it's one of my favorite series that I'm reading right now, and I feel like it fits with the stuff that's been coming out, so I guess it's a bit of a longer shot just because it's so long, but I feel like it's not impossible, so I'll throw it on there.
Yeah.
They'll have to change the title, though.
I'm sure they'll think of something.
That gives an entirely different vibe from what it is actually like. Shall we get into our number 5?
Sure. Would you like to go first, or?
I guess I can go first. Yeah. I just hinted at it before, talking about musical BL, but my number 5 is Given. This is an ongoing BL series about a group of 4 boys. They're in a band, and melodrama ensues.
Yep.
The main, like, initial plot, I guess, involves the 2 high school members of the group, Mafuyu and, what's his name?
It has Umi in it.
Ritzka.
Well, yes,
Ritzka.
I don't never remember his first name. I'm like, it's something Umi.
His last name probably does. I remember their names because they're all seasons, so I remember, like, their given names. Given names. Yeah, Mafuyu and Ritzka. Mafuyu's like this kind of odd boy who's always clutching this old guitar at school, and he has this spot in the stairwell that he goes to nap. He's very aloof. He doesn't have a lot of friends going on. And Ritzka is angsty. He's an angsty little bean, and he ends up meeting Mafuyu in his nap spot, and he plays the guitar. He has a guitar on him, and Mafuyu's like, oh, you know, can you teach me how to play the guitar? And they start doing these little impromptu lessons. After some, like, back and forth, but it doesn't really matter. They start doing these impromptu lessons. They become more interested in each other. Eventually, Ritzka takes Mafuyu to meet the rest of the band. They realize that he's actually a pretty good singer, so they kind of recruit him into the band as a vocalist. And yeah, it's Ritzka and Mafia getting closer and closer. Ritzka finds out about the tragedy that is in Mafia's past, that it doesn't really make him aloof. Like, that's just his personality. But it does make him afraid, I think, of pursuing any kind of further relationships. And yeah, and the older members of the group are Akihiko, I think, and Haruki. They definitely like each other, but they also are definitely really far from having a relationship because they are messy.
Messy is right.
So yeah, we have this very sweet, pure, innocent not even first love. It's first love for Ritzka story between Mafia and Ritzka, and it's adorable. And then you have the melodramatic, absolute mess that is Haruki and Akihiko's thing. And it's just, yeah, I think even back when the anime came out, I'd heard good buzz about the property, but I didn't expect it to be that good, you know?
Yeah, it's a wonderful anime as well for those who may be wanting to watch it. I think, like with most series that have a musical element, it's definitely heightened when you can actually hear the music that's meant to be portrayed. But the manga is phenomenal. Like, really, like, even if you're not a BL fan, this is one that I would generally just recommend as, like, a great, like, romantic drama series with queer characters. So, just, it's so good.
It's excellent. It's all about, like, you know, finding community and catharsis through music. It's about grief. It's about young love and old love as well. Love that has gotten stale, but you just are afraid to let it die.
Yeah, the comfort of the familiar.
It's also, Akihiko is openly bisexual, which I have to point out whenever that's the case, because it's still rare and I still appreciate it. Yeah, it's really good. Watch the anime, read the manga, do all of the things. That's my number 5. The art's really great too.
Yes.
Just really solid BL art. There's no, like, sexual content either, as of yet.
As of 3 or 4 volumes into this currently 6-volume series, there's nothing that explicit.
Untoward.
Yeah, Given is phenomenal, and I love it a whole lot. It's a really great relationship between both of our main couples, which is kind of a good bouncing off point because my number 5 also focuses on romance, not a queer romance, but this was one of my titles that, like, absolutely surprised me, blew me out of the water this year, and that is My Dress Up Darling. My Dress Up Darling is a romantic comedy between, and sort of a friendship series as well, about 2 teenagers who are very, very different. So our main character, he comes from a traditional doll-making family. His grandfather has always made the beautiful Japanese dolls, and so he grew up with a great love for them, a great admiration, and he thinks that traditional dolls are kind of the most beautiful thing ever, and he's hoping to continue the family business once he graduates and, like, gets older, but he's not quite to the level where he can sculpt the faces and sculpt the various parts of them, these dolls, yet, but he does have a great skill at making clothing, making the dolls dresses, and because of his dedication and his admiration and his love for this this artistry and for his family business, and his fanaticism for it. He doesn't have too many friends. He's quite a shy, kind of reserved person. He's a little bit embarrassed to talk about the things that he's passionate about. And so he kind of just stays on the sidelines. Comparatively, our other main character, she is the popular girl in class. Everybody knows her. She's quite a like gal stereotype. She's pretty and a little bit like just overtly like very friendly. She knows she's pretty. She seems like she has a lot of experience, a lot of friends. She's done a lot of things in her life. And our main character, male character, he has a lot of not jealousy, but he admires her because she has the courage to talk about the things that she's passionate about, even if they're not things that typically are stuff that other people likes. He overhears her telling her friends about a incident she had where some guy kind of made fun of her keychain on her bag because it was from some popular anime, and he's like, oh, that's pretty lame, and she chewed him out over it. Like, why would you say that it's lame? It's obviously something that I care about or I like and enjoy. You're not going to shame me for my interests. Anyway, so through a series of events, they end up running into each other in the school's home ec room. Our main character, he's relegated there because the sewing machine at home has stopped working, so he's finishing up some of the doll clothes at school. And our main female character, she wants to go in there to make a cosplay, costume for an outfit where she wants to cosplay her favorite character from her recently my favorite video game, visual novel. It's an erg game, and not only is it like an erg, it's a really overtly like kind of fetishy game with a lot of like characters with like, it's very humiliation based erg, but she loves it, right? Like, she thinks it's great that there's there's a real fine art to it, a lot of really great elements, and there's one character that she absolutely loves. She wants to dress as and become her favorite character. And so she asks, because she recognizes that this guy knows how to sew. He knows how to make clothes, and her previous attempts at making this costume haven't been that great, just because she doesn't know how to put clothing together. She's never made a cosplay before, so she asks him for help to make this the best costume that it can be, and thus their tentative friendship starts. So a lot of the early first volume especially is him, helping her try to figure out what material she needs, getting her measurements, which of course, this is ecchi. There's quite a bit of fan service, but it's never creepy fan service. It's never gratuitous, and it's always done with a very lighthearted tone. Which again, if you know me, I have a complicated relationship with a lot of titles like this, but this was so funny. Both of our main characters are so likable, and I really like the dynamic of their relationship, both their friendship and possibly more involved romantic relationship, and what the parts of each other that they admire. I also, it's so funny. It's legitimately a really good comedy. One of my favorite parts is that in order to, understand her interest in this game or this love for this game, our main male character plays this erg. She's like, oh, can I try it? Because she's like, oh yeah, it's so good, and the sequel's even better, because she's like, but you have to play the main one first, or else you're not going to understand it. So he's playing this erg, mainly because he wants to understand why she likes it so much, but also he wants better reference pictures to get the costume exactly right. So he's just playing this really, really fetishy, like overtly like weird arrow, and his grandpa comes in and is like, oh my god, like what are you doing? and he's just like, what, grandpa? Because he like doesn't find it sexy, like he's not into it in the sexy sense, so he like doesn't have that initial embarrassment. He like doesn't understand. It's so funny. And then later they go to the city to buy, you know, fabric and stuff, and they're so we see, as the reader, we see all of the people lining out like to get into a restaurant, and you know, it's just like office workers and normal people. Anyway, so these two, our main characters, leave the restaurant, and all of like the people in line are like, oh look, like it's a teenage couple, like isn't that so nostalgic and good for them and blah blah blah. But then they overhear their conversation where it's like, oh, I can't get past this part in the game where you're like on just discussing all of this, like like, am I not doing something right? I can't get past the premature ejaculation section, and all of these office workers are like, what the fuck are these teenagers talking? Like, oh my god, it's so
Zoomers, am I right?
Pretty much, and it's so funny. Like, it's just done really, really well. It's sweet. It's lovely. It also, like, the larger theme of, you know, not being that self-confident in your interests, and therefore not being confident in yourself, is done really well. And just, oh, it's so likable and so funny, and it's cute and sexy, and just like, it's a good time. It's a really good time, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, that definitely makes me more excited to read it. It was kind of on my to read eventually type of list, but you might have moved that. Yeah, that sounds great. Should we go into another question?
Absolutely. The next question, this question was submitted by the wonderful at 365 Days of Yaoi, of 801 on Twitter, who asks, this year has been tough for most. What have you found difficult, and did manga help? If yes, what have been your go-to comfort blanket wrapping around you reads or watches? I'm open to any comfort media. So, asking what was our kind of feel-good escapism from this past year.
Yeah, we've definitely needed a lot of that. Let's see. For me, honestly, like, outside of manga, my biggest, like, comfort media, I guess, has been musicals. I have been on a big Broadway kick all of this year. Starting with my discovery of Hadestown, which is now, like, my favorite musical of all time. I adore it. And, like, before that, my favorite was West Side Story, so it's like, it's not something that I update that often. But wow, it's so good. I keep rewatching the bootleg. And yeah, I just keep listening to different musical soundtracks and trying to broaden up my knowledge of theater, musical theater.
Yep.
Yeah. Is there anything that you've been turning to besides manga?
I mean, I've done a lot of novel reading this year. I think people who have watched my weekly live streams have noticed that I've really been diving into the Discworld novels by Terry Pratchett. I love that world. I have been a Pratchett fan for a long time, and Discworld was always something that in childhood I enjoyed, but I had never read the entirety of the 40-odd books in the series. So this past year, I've been making a effort to read the novels that I hadn't yet read. And that's going quite successfully thanks to my local library system. And it's just been really wonderful to just revel in his fantasy satire. Like, it's just a fun time. But in classic Pratchett form is also like a scathing commentary on society as well. So like, it's interesting to see how some of the issues and things that we are currently, even now, still talking about and combating in in society, have how Pratchett discusses them and how Pratchett portrays them in his his magnum opus, as it were, with Discworld. It's just a good time, and I love the characters, and I love the world. And if you haven't yet tried a Discworld book, I say give it a shot. There's a lot to choose from. There's a lot of different character groups to choose from. A lot of different styles of story to enjoy. And, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know anything about Discworld other than what I've, absorbed through cultural osmosis, but I've really been enjoying listening to you wrapping them up. In terms of manga, I think returning to things that are dumb and loud has been helpful. I reread all of Seraph of the End, which is the dumbest, loudest thing I've ever read. I read 2 of the light novels associated with it as well. Not the Gurren ones, because I don't like him. But the vampire ones, because I do like vampires.
And your explanation of those has been a treat.
It was great. They were great. I genuinely, legitimately had a lot of fun with them. And, yeah, I get a kick out of Seraph of the End, even as I understand that it is objectively garbage. And, yeah, I also started rewatching Devilman Crybaby, which, the ending to that's kind of a downer, but watching it is, kind of, a little bit. Human extinction, whatever. But, I mean, it's also a series that is very fun to just, watch all the crazy colors and animation and laugh at all the vagina monsters and the homoerotic subtext. So, yeah, I guess I've been enjoying stuff like that. I was diving into Danmachi a little more, which is definitely sort of a comfort anime for me. It's, you don't have to think too hard about it. It's got cute girls. It's got, fantasy game stuff. So, yeah. I mean, this year, if we're talking anime, something loud and dumb and fun that I really enjoyed. It frustrated me to no end, but I enjoyed the ride, was Yomushi Pedal. People saw my breakdowns on Twitter over that series. It was great.
And it was a great time. it's definitely, it's not, I'm not going to say it's a good series, but it's an effective series. It's not a bad series. It's not, but it's not my favorite series either. And of course, in that vein, also, I rewatched Yuri on Ice because I love that series, and it's also very sweet and hopeful and lovely and just good. And then in a similar, again, continuing with the sports series, Haikyuu prior to its ending and with its ending was really a very hopeful, optimistic, positive part of my routine in the early part of the year, especially when we were first going into lockdown and things like that. And I have now currently been watching the new season and just reliving a lot of those memories, because it's a very positive, hopeful, optimistic series that has a lot of really likable characters, and like honestly for me, like one of the best ending arcs just ever. Like I really love seeing the characters outside of high school, and kind of the reassurance that has in seeing like there is more to life than just what you achieve in high school. And just because you're good at volleyball in high school doesn't mean you gotta be a volleyball player. Like that's something that I really appreciated for that series. And I love that series a lot. And I am hoping to reread the entire thing once all of the print volumes come out in English, because I'm just gonna binge it over like 2 weekends or something.
There you go. Yeah, honestly, I've been finding a lot of comfort in Yona of the Dawn as well recently. Just like, it feels so nostalgic because it's drawing so much on like late 90s and early aughts, like, you know, fantasy shoujo tropes. But, you know, without a lot of the hairier stuff from those, like some of the gender politics, for example. I adore it. I love seeing, like, Riri and Suwon being, like, super political and everything in some of the more recent ones. Like, obviously, Suwon's complicated. But, like, there's some moments where I'm, like, cheering because, like, I can hear the Les Mis in the background when he's talking. And I'm like, hell yeah. Wait, you're a bad guy. Riri gives me so much life. I don't know. Yona is funny and full of adventure and romance and weirdly progressive politics. So, you know, I enjoy that.
It's a phenomenal series, and I think we've said it before on the podcast. Say it again. If you're not reading Yona of the Dawn, give it a try. It's wonderful. Definitely worth your time. One of the best things coming out right now in manga, just full stop.
It's really good. Shall we go into number 4?
Absolutely. So my number 4 is again kind of good segue from the last question, because this series was very much like, it was just really sweet and reassuring. And if you listen to our kind of honorable mentions portion of the podcast, then it's in line with a lot of the romance stuff that we saw this year, and that is My Androgynous Boyfriend, which is an ongoing josei title about a working woman who works for a magazine. She's very capable at her job, and her long-time committed relationship with her very pretty boyfriend, who I believe he works as a model. He's kind of like an Instagram famous person, but also he kind of works at stores and things, and he's a little bit of a house, not husband, but homebody. He looks after the house because he realizes
indoor boyfriend.
Yes, because he realizes that his girlfriend is very much, like, she has a very demanding job. She can't be doing all the cooking and cleaning and whatever else. And it's really sweet. It's lovely to, one, see, like, such a committed relationship, and one that's been, like, with people who are together and have been together for a long time, and how that dynamic is portrayed. Obviously, like, there's the whole aspect of, like, gender expression. Not that our main male character, he's not gay, he's not, like, he's completely straight, and he says that. He like, outright states that fact multiple times, and that just because he dresses more androgynously, in quote-unquote more femininely, he looks after how his fashion looks, he puts on a full face of makeup and is very particular about his hair, nails, etc., it doesn't make him any less of a man comparatively to guys who don't do that. And I really liked that kind of breakdown of gender stereotypes and what is appropriate for men to be doing versus what women are doing. And it's just, yeah, I mean, it's sweet and lovely, and I really liked their relationship. I really liked our main characters, and I really wanted to read more, which I think the second volume has come out. I have not yet picked it up, but it was one that was just like everything that I kind of wanted it to be from the idea of it, from when it was licensed, and it was all of that and more. And yeah, I mean, I really love this series a lot.
Yeah, it was cute. It reminds me of, like, there's a Japanese, like, Harajuku model that I follow named Ryucheru, who, he is often associated with the genderless fashion movement, which Meguru is a part of in My Androgynous Boyfriend. But he doesn't actually consider himself part of the movement. But he wears very sort of bright, like, retro 80s type of fashion that's very androgynous. And his thing is that, like, even though he's, like, straight and dating another model named, well, they're married now, named Peko, he always speaks in, like, one kotoba, which is, like, really feminine speech. But I had been following him from back when he was doing, like, comedy stuff on, like, variety shows. But now he's, like, had a kid, and he has a YouTube channel, and he does lots of videos with Peko, and it's very cute and wholesome, so it gives me similar vibes. Yeah, it's just nice, like, especially the stuff about, like, gender expression and fashion is something that I really like to see, I guess. So even though I wasn't as enamored with this particular series as you were, that's definitely something that I appreciated in it.
I also really liked how there, at least with the first volume, there was never any, like, actual, and I mean, this isn't what you inherently want with every series. Not every series can be like this, but I was glad there wasn't any drama, like, insofar as, like, being unsure about the relationship, because these characters have been together, I think, 7 years at the point of the story, and so they're totally in love, and there's never, like, despite other people questioning their relationship, they're never unsure about each other's feelings, and they have quite open communication, and I love seeing that. Give me more of that. Like, it's nice to see a couple who isn't, like, second guessing their entire relationship at the mere mention of something possible, like someone just asking a pretty typical question. I don't know. It's just really, it was refreshing.
Yeah. That's been a theme this year of just, like, being exhausted with the typical shoujo, like, miscommunication tropes, and just, like, being extremely pleasantly surprised by series that buck that trend and just, like, have great communication between the characters and characters who trust each other and love each other. That's gonna, I think, come up further up the list as well. So
also, just before we go to the next question, also, I really like the fact that Meguro, despite obviously having a huge interest in his own personal appearance, doesn't then project that onto his girlfriend and, like, demand that she looks a certain way or behave a certain way. And that even without makeup and without all the fashion and this, what, that, whatever else, he thinks she's amazing and gorgeous. I like them. I like their dynamic.
My number 4 also focuses on a very lovely, loving, stable, long-term relationship. It's called Hell's Paradise. Jigokuraku.
I mean, you're not wrong, but like...
So this is about a lot of characters, but the main character is Gabimaru the Hollow, who is one of a group of death row inmates who gets essentially a second chance at life if they agree to go to this mysterious island in search of an elixir of immortality that is supposed to be there somewhere. And nobody has ever come back from the island alive. Except for one man who was not alive. He was transformed.
Yep.
Into... You really just have to read the series to see what he was transformed into. Yeah. So, not a safe island, not an easy task, but Gabimaru loves and adores his wife and promised that he would go home to her someday. So, he takes them up on their offer, along with a bunch of other death row inmates. They go to this island. Each of the death row inmates is assigned a executioner, from a particular sword school that's known for producing executioners, who is meant to just be observing them, and if they try to escape from the island without the elixir, they are to execute them immediately. The executioner assigned to Gabimaru is named Sagiri, and she is great. I really like her. Yeah, she could do more, but it's a lot of really bloody action. This mangaka, I think is an editor, right? Primarily before doing Jigokuraku. But he used to be an assistant to the Chainsaw Man creator when he was working on Fire
Which
Punch.
Makes 100% sense. Like,
it makes so much sense. It makes 1,000% sense. This is a series that is very grotesque. There's a lot of really awesome, crazy monsters. In this strange island that is built around, like, the concept of paradise in multiple different, like, Asian religions. Taoism, Buddhism are the main ones, I think. But, yeah, there's... It's wild.
Yes. It's so good. And also, just preemptively, it has, I think, 4 or 5 volumes in print right now, but this is another title you can follow via Shonen Jump on their website, not on the app because it's too violent for the app, but the entirety of the series so far is on there, and it will be ending soon. It is very close to the end if you are following it week to week. So not super duper long either.
Yeah. I haven't read nearly as much as G has. I've read 4 volumes so far. I think the 5th one just came out a couple weeks ago, so I haven't read that one yet. But, yeah, I was slow to get to this one. And, G sold me on it. And it is extremely my shit. So, it's one of those series that has all this really cool, gross, like, horror and action imagery, but really has, like, this big beating heart at the center of it, which I really appreciate. I love, actually, that, like, Gabimaru's redemption arc happened before the series started. he still, like, he goes back on stuff a lot, and he's struggling a lot with, like, this really harsh upbringing that he had, where it was very, like, kill or be killed. Don't trust anyone. You know, he gets put on this mission because, like, no matter how many different ways they tried to execute him, he just wouldn't die.
Mm-hmm.
Because of this intense ninja training that he's been through. Where he's almost like this, like, feral cat that's just, like, wound up.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like he has already found love in his wife, and he's found, like, peace, and seen the kind of life that he wants to live, and the kind of person that he wants to be. So rather than having this, like, character who is heartless at the start and gains a heart, it's this character who has found his heart and is trying to strive towards the person that he wants to be. And I find that very compelling. I was just reading Volume 4, and I really liked just this moment where he, like, there's this girl, who seems to be involved with the monsters who run the island, and he wants information from her. So, like, impulsively, he just, like, jumps at her and says, "You need to start telling us." And, like, she starts crying, and he's like, oh, that's right. That's something that I always do. Like, jumping right into things. What do I do to make her feel better? And I don't know. I like that, because he is this very, like, harsh, like, vengeful, like, seinen, badass fucking protagonist. But he also, like, is aware of, like, the bad things about that, and is a careful and empathetic character at his core, and I appreciate that a lot.
And he also gets a big blush when his wife kisses him. So, like...
Yeah.
I also really appreciate in Hell's Paradise that because of this element of Gabimaru having a wife and loving his wife, like, really being dedicated to her, that there's, from that, the potential of romance between him and Sagiri is kind of, like, immediately nipped in the bud. And it's not that it's inherently wrong to have a romance between your male and female main characters, but I just think it's a more interesting dynamic that they're relying on each other without this, like, romantic element being there.
Yeah.
It's just refreshing, right?
I like seeing their... I don't know if I would call it a friendship. But their relationship deepen just through them having qualities in each other that they admire. Rather than being like, ooh, she cute.
Yeah, oh damn.
Cute sword girl. I also like everybody teasing him about getting with her, and he's like, no thanks, I have a wife.
Nah, I'm good though. I'm like, nah, yeah. Hell's Paradise is wonderful. When I read it, I was originally reading it on the Manga Plus app, which I actually am still reading it on the Manga Plus app, but when I was first reading it, they had all the chapters there, no longer, which is why I recommend the Shonen Jump option for those whose regions it works for. But it was just really captivating. As Ray said, like, there's this real beating heart within the series because of its characters, and it's not just Gabimaru that you really grow or Sagiri that you really grow attached to. It is almost this sort of battle royale-esque setup, right? Where all of these death row inmates are competing against each other, as well as, like, trying to survive on this island. But you see quickly how, despite all of these criminals, you know, obviously being criminals and having a background that put them on death row in the first place, they still are people, and there's still a lot that they can achieve, and they're just because they were in this situation doesn't inherently mean that they were bad people or that it was even fair that they weren't. Like, I don't know. It's just, it's nuanced, and I appreciate that, and all of the characters are really interesting, because it is quite a large cast of characters.
Like, I'm only 4 volumes in, and I am really coming to enjoy, like, so many of the characters. This volume, apart from, like, the main group, it also focuses on, the indigenous girl and the guy with the scar over his eyes. I really enjoy their dynamic. I didn't think I would enjoy, but I am enjoying the dynamic between the 2 bandit brothers, who are definitely horrible, horrible people, but, like, their devotion to each other is kind of sweet.
Yes. It'll getcha. It'll getcha. The character writing.
Also, the monsters who run the island, the Tensen, whatever, they are scary.
Yep.
They're so scary. There is some, like, gender normativity going on in this series that's a little, like, to certain readers might put them off, just as a warning, I guess. But the thing about the Master Tensen is that they can just switch gender at random. They don't seem to have a ton of logic to it. They just kind of do what they feel like doing. But it is, everything about them is so off-putting. Least of all that they eat people to sustain themselves. That's cool. Look, the monsters in this are really cool.
They are, and I don't know, like, for me, it really achieves each part of it, like, each, I guess, quote-unquote, arc, does something just that much better, and it builds a lot from the beginning, and it does hit the ground running. Like, it's a pretty effective series right out the gate, but as you come to know these characters more and more, it just becomes that much more effective when a lot more of the violence and a lot more of these creepy monster shenanigans is happening. And highly recommend this one. It's a good time, and if you don't mind creepy horror monsters and action, then
creepy horror monsters, lots of body horror, lots of general gore.
Yep.
If you're fine with that. Yeah, I liked it. It gives me vibes of, like, any super violent, like, shonen, like Tokyo Ghoul or whatever, which is always my shit for the most part, as long as it has a heart. Like, that's the big thing for me. It's like, I love all that crazy gore and violence as long as there's a heart behind it. And I feel like this has that, and I enjoy that. So, yeah, and I enjoy having a bit of an older protagonist with a bit more life experience in his belt.
Yeah.
I was saying it reminded me of Rurouni Kenshin in that way, but obviously I can read it with a less guilty conscience than that series, which I read back in high school. But that was one of the things that I enjoyed about that series back in the day, so I'm glad to have, a series that isn't that one to enjoy that element in.
Yes. Yeah, I think Tokyo Ghoul is a really apt comparison. Obviously different settings, but even the art style is very similar between the two.
Yeah. There's cool monsters in Tokyo Ghoul, too. But so far, Hell's Paradise seems to be a little more not falling apart at the seams. Tokyo Ghoul was constantly.
Yeah. But yeah. So with that, do we want to go into the next question?
Yes.
Okay. So our next question is from Dylan at Dynamic Dylan 26, another good friend of the show. First off, he has a couple of his favorite titles from this year, which include Liquor and Cigarettes, Given, Blue Flag, A Man and His Cat, Manly Appetites, and Cutie and the Beast. Many of those which we've discussed already in this podcast, and totally agree. I just read Manly Appetites. It's a pretty fun first volume. Another BL title there. And Cutie and the Beast is the wrestling romance one, isn't it?
Yep. Yep. I'm glad that it seems to be fitting so many people's tastes. I will be avoiding that one because of the age gap. But yeah.
But his actual question is: we got our first BL light novel in a long time. Yes, no, or maybe by Michi Ichiho. Have you read it? What are your thoughts on BL light novels coming back in the future? So I have not yet read this. I have purchased it. I just have not received it yet. And BL light novels are actually, we're seeing some of the micro novels coming out via Futokiya, which is pretty interesting. Obviously with J-Novel's success with their Yuri light novels, it really wouldn't surprise me to see more within this genre becoming available, because obviously like BL is he has a huge fan base, and even more so than it did 10 or 15 years ago. We have the sustained market for these more diverse light novels. I'm sure we will see more. I'm sure, especially if this particular title does sell well, that we will see more. I'm not that familiar with a lot of BL light novel titles, just because I have a hard enough time keeping up with the light novels I do read and follow. But I am always up for more within a genre. If not for me, then for the fans of said genre. And from what I've heard of Yes, No, or Maybe, I'm certainly interested. I know it's getting a film, I think, next year. And yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going to be reading it just once I have actually received it, because again, global pandemic, mail has been quite slow internationally.
Yeah, pretty much same opinion. Except I read less light novels than she, so.
And I don't actually read that many light novels. I follow maybe I don't know. I actively follow 4 titles, but there's again so much light novels, so many light novels coming out. Absolutely spoiled for choice. But yeah, so do we want to go to our number 3?
Yes. My number 3 is another surprise for me. I waited a long time before picking this one up as well. This is SpyxFamily. I love this.
It's so good.
It's really good. I wasn't expecting it to be. I don't tend to get on very well with Shonen Jump comedy or gag series. And I was I heard the premise and I was I don't know how that's gonna sustain a series. It sounds like it'd be cute for a chapter. This is so cute. It's so cute. It is laugh out loud funny. I really love all 3 of the main characters and their dynamics. Yeah, it's just so heartwarming. Which is weird because it is about a fake family put together by the husband and father, who is currently going by the alias of Lloyd Forger. He is actually the famous international spy, Twilight. And his newest mission involves getting a fake kid to enroll in this super prestigious private school, in order to get close to his target, who's a politician, and prevent a war.
I mean, not a fake kid. The kid is real, but a fake...
Not like, fake...
child.
Daughter. Like, not his actual...
child.
Come on. You all know the premise of SpyxFamily. Yeah, so he's a spy. He ends up adopting this little girl. She's like 6. She's a first grader, I think. From a really shady backwoods orphanage, named Anya. She is, unbeknownst to him, a psychic. So she knows the real identity of both of her parents, and they have no idea. And then he ends up finding this woman who's desperate to at least put up the facade of being married to get her coworkers and her creepy brother off her back.
Also the government. Just avoid spy accusations.
Oh yeah, the government as well. Which is her brother. She doesn't know it, but it's her brother. Everyone's got a secret identity in this one. Her brother is like a secret police torture guy. He's creepy. Don't like him very much.
Yeah, he's a bit full on, putting it mildly.
He's funny though. I laughed. But her name is Yor, and she is moonlighting as a famous assassin. So we've got the central fake family of a spy, an assassin, and a psychic. And none of them really know anything about each other except Anya, who secretly knows everything, but she's also 6.
And she doesn't want her family to...
and not very smart.
Yeah, doesn't want her family to fall apart either. She's like, this is my last chance. Nobody else wants me.
She was in a horrible, she was in this horrible orphanage that treated her terribly, and now she's got these 2 parents, and of course, she reads their minds. She knows exactly who they are, and her response as a 6-year-old child who loves spy cartoons is,
hell yeah.
That's so cool.
Hell yeah.
So she wants her super cool spy cartoon family to stay together, because she's never had a family before, and also because this is the coolest shit she's ever experienced. And yeah, it's like, the family is so screwed up in every way, but also such a wonderful family who, won't admit that they love each other very much, but they definitely do. And, not necessarily in a romantic way between Yor and Lloyd. I don't know how it'll develop in the future, but, right now, it's just very strong, family energy between the 3 of them. And it's so wholesome and wonderful.
Anya.
And I did not expect it to be as heartwarming as it is.
Yeah, Anya is great. I mean, we were kind of mentioned that, a lot of the times, cute kid series can be,
saturn.
You can feel the agenda of, hey, how about you have children? We have a aging population and a falling birth rate. Please have children, you nerds.
Anya is incredible.
She's great. And it's just, really funny. Obviously it's a comedy series, but it's, legitimately funny. Poor Lloyd just was, always trying to secretly do his spy stuff. because obviously that's his whole point.
Yeah, so basically everyone in the entire world is incredibly stupid. Except for him. He's like this suave, like James Bond type of figure, except like super virginal.
Yes.
Is the difference between him and James Bond. He's also kind of an idiot in his own way, but he's mostly like here to play the British like straight man to everything. Especially to like Anya being 6.
Yes, exactly. He's very capable, but like also he has a psychic daughter, so which he doesn't know about. So like that shenanigans, he's never gonna win. Like he's just.
He's also got his like coworker, the tech guy, who's just like praying for his destruction. To be honest, but also like awesome uncle energy. I really love, I do have a weakness for cute kids. And, once Anya enters this, like, super elite school, I love, like, the dynamic between her and the other kids. I love, like, her little friend, the little girl is so cute. But especially, like, the little kid that she's supposed to be, like, you know, schmoozing up to, because he's like the son of this politician that is Lloyd's target, and he's just like a brat, but also he like definitely has a huge crush on Anya,
and she doesn't realize whatsoever.
And she doesn't. No, because he's 6 and he deals with his emotions by teasing his crush.
Yeah, but then
so he's just like super mean to her all the time, and she's like, I'm supposed to get this kid to like me, but I don't like him because he's mean.
But Dad has to succeed in his mission, so and she's like,
but he's mean.
He's so mean. And she's like, she thinks super hard, and then she's like, hey, we got a dog, and he's like, okay. Like, are you jealous?
Super hard.
Yeah, it's like,
she thinks super hard about how to make friends with this guy, and then she's like, but he's so mean. And then she just is mean back, which, like, fair. Like, stand your ground, girl. You know what?
It's
but,
so
you know, gotta prevent war or whatever.
It's so good.
Their dog is so good,
so
too.
fluffy. He's so big and fluffy.
So
and
big.
Also has a secret. Like, everyone's got a secret.
I don't know the secret of the dog yet, because I haven't read volume 4.
Oh, no. Okay, well, the dog has a secret.
I can't wait.
It's such a good series, honestly. Like, it's one that I did follow from the first chapter. It was one of the more recently debuted series on, again, the Shonen Jump and its general platforms, apps, whatever you read their series on. It's so funny, so wholesome. If you're a fan of the fake dating to real dating trope, this is very likely gonna be your shit. Like, I think you'll enjoy this one. And as Ray said,
that's just like found family, to be honest. Like, these 3 people are like, obviously they've been through some crap to get into the positions that they're in right now. But they make each other so happy, and it's just wonderful.
It's so sweet, and I mean, and there's cool spy stuff going on from time to time. I mean, plans may be foiled in overtly comedic ways, but we're gonna save the day at the end. Yeah, it's a great time.
Yeah. It's great. It's lovely. The art's really good, too. I love the reaction phases. Everyone talks about the reaction phases. Obviously, Anya, I think, has the queen title in that. Like, she is the most overtly memeable character. But, like, everyone gets their time to shine in terms of reaction faces.
Lloyd's faces are pure art on multiple levels. Again, because he does play the straight man so often to like all the other crazy shit going on that he's just looks so exhausted or like befuddled like all of the time. And you're like, oh, poor
yes,
poor boy.
What's best is when you get them both together in the same panel and like Lloyd's giving like his best like exhausted face and then Anya's just like doing something wild in the background.
I love Anya's what I have deemed little shit face where she's like, heh, heh.
I love it. I honestly one of my most used reaction like images. Especially I love the one where like she's making because like in her school they told her like, if you want to be a proper young lady who everyone likes, you need to smile more. Which, okay. But, she, hitting them really young with that, huh? But she just, like, whatever they tell her to, I mean, y'all have met 6-year-olds. If you tell them to smile, they cannot smile like a human being. So she just has this awful sneer. And she just goes, heh. But, the first time she whips that one out, like, this, you know, the politician kid is, like, bullying her, as he's wont to do. And she's just, like, quietly seething, trying to keep her smile up. And, like, it just zooms in super close to her eye, and she's got a little flame in it. It's so funny.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this year has been one full of Shonen Jump debuts, right? And I think SpyxFamily is technically in Jump Plus, regardless. We have had so many... I think we've had 19 or 20 new titles from Jump this year, which is absurd. And SpyxFamily, I think, immediately found an audience because it is so genuine and really likable and funny and just heartwarming, and it stayed,
and it really like it's easy to understand
yes.
too. Like you really just need to hear the premise to know exactly what it's about.
Yes, and it does appeal.
So it's like from chapter 1 it hits a stride.
And it's not like, maybe this is a weird way to put it, but it doesn't have like that, it doesn't feel Japanese. Well, like it's not in Japan. Like it's not set in Japan, which may mean it has a bit more crossover with like Western tastes or Western I don't know. Like it's a little bit, it's unlike some of the other stuff that we've seen recently. It's not set in Japan. It's not set anywhere. It's a fictional like Eastern European basic, like the two Germany situation.
But it's mostly riffing on James Bond more than anything else.
And I think that definitely has helped its immediate like people attaching themselves to it. But this series from the get-go kind of stood out amongst the crowd of just all of these titles that we've gotten this year and has sustained the popularity. It's great. Highly recommend. With that, my number 3 is another title that I just recently started reading. It recently debuted in print. It was something that I didn't know really much of at all, never heard of it prior to its licensing, but it sounded like something I'd be interested in. And I was not disappointed. And that is Heterogenia Linguistica by Salt Seno. I think this has 2 volumes in Japanese. I'm not sure. We currently have 1 volume in English. And this is the story of a young researcher called Hakuba who, because of his professor suffers an injury and is unable to continue his research. He's a linguistics student. And so he decides to, or he is appointed by his professor to continue his research for the period that, of recovery. And so it is this young guy who is, for the first time, kind of going out in the field with his knowledge, and observing and recording language and its impact on culture and things like that, linguistic stuff, but not in a mundane setting, within a fantasy world in which he is studying, I guess, supernatural languages and cultures. The first volume, we see werewolves, we see lizard men, or lizard people, maybe is perhaps more correct. Is it harpies or sirens? Sirens. Slimes. Pretty typical fantasy, creatures, characters, people, whatever. And so, yeah, first of all, I love this series a lot. I think it fits, if you're a fan of stuff like Delicious in Dungeon, where a fantasy world is explored through relatable or more mundane topics, i.e. with Delicious in Dungeon, that's cooking and food. This is through language and communication and linguistics, and done with the same care that Delicious in Dungeon has, with like actually thinking about all of the different things that would impact certain races and how they communicate, and how that can be explained or explored on the page throughout the series. It's just really good. And even the volume design matches Delicious in Dungeon. They're good companion pieces. Let's just put it that way. But I mean, this is definitely like almost Hakuba is definitely like a fish out of water. The student who has the theoretical knowledge and has been studying language for a long time, but now going out and living it and having to communicate with native speakers. He's trying to figure out his own understandings of said languages and reassess these certain things, and realizing the gaps in his knowledge as well. It's really, really good. It's really good. When I talked about it in my wrap-up video for the week that I had read it, I also likened it to a novel series, a sci-fi novel series, called the Wayfarer series, by Becky Chambers. And I really liked, I compared it to that because in that series, there's a lot of, that's kind of like a slice of life sci-fi series for one, but it has a lot of various alien races, and each of these aliens has a very different culture. It's not just like humanity copy and pasted in a different color. They all have very unique and usable and understandable cultures that are impacted by their history, by their physiology, which is what this series, Heterogenia Linguistica, does as well. As a really good example is that for the werewolves, werewolf groups, they have vocal language, but they also, more than half of their communication is done through scent and smell, right? Which is not something that humans can necessarily imitate or understand. And then when you see these werewolves communicating with the lizard men, they have some language commonalities, but because of the physiology of lizards, they don't have lips and they don't have certain things. They can't make the same sounds perfectly as humans might be able to do, and then that werewolves might be able to do. And so the barriers to perfect communication between these cultures is just really interesting. It's just really interesting. And it's done really well. So, yeah.
I am honestly a big fan of any kind of fantasy where you're not immediately either killing or trying to fuck the monsters in it. Yeah. So, I'm very interested in this one. I also, I really liked Arrival.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the themes there as far as, like, the nature of language and communication. So,
yeah,
I definitely need to pick this up.
It's one that I
Sooner rather
knew and know that you will enjoy, which is why I'm like, hey, Ray, read this one.
Yeah.
I mean, I will also say that on your don't immediately want to fuck the monsters, that's not the purpose, but one of the characters, the guide for our human character around this fantasy world, is half human, half werewolf, and is the biological child of this professor who has injured himself. And I'm like, dude, that everyone is free to be into whatever they want, but that's a bit like.
Gee, are you not aware of how many girls in the world desperately want to fuck the Beast from Beauty and the Beast?
I am very aware. Anyway, it's a good series, fun, funny, and again, like, if you enjoy, Arrival is another good comparison, but if you enjoy Delicious in Dungeon, especially, with as like a slice of life fantasy with a more mundane element, definitely check out Heterogenia Linguistica. It's great.
Shall we answer another question?
Sure. So next question is from Brainchild 129 at Brainchild 129, who asks, what trends in manga licenses would you like to see continued or pursued further? Conversely, what trends would you like to see stop?
I would like to see age gaps that involve a child and an adult get a little less frequent.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah, not really into that. Also the slavery, like, please, can we not do that?
Oh, yes, the slavery. Can we not do that?
Stop portraying slavery as like it's okay in this circumstance because the slaver is a good person. Like, it's just creepy and weird and just huge.
Also, stop trying to have that conversation with me, please.
And also stop trying to make it a romantic
Twitter
thing
eggs.
as well. Like, please, guys, just stop. Just stop with the slavery. It's gross.
Unless you're here to make an actual fucking point. Like, honestly, I don't think you need to have slavery in your series.
No.
As a major plot point. Like, unless you're here to say something.
And in
why is it here?
Yeah.
Do you just like it? Is that why it's here?
Yeah,
Get out.
It's also in a similar vein, and it's not only isekai that does the slavery stuff, but it's majority isekai that does the slavery stuff. But I'm just like really tired, and I don't even read any of this because I know that I will hate it and it will make me angry. But I'm just also tired of like the let's give incels like their power fantasy in the most violent and abhorrent way possible. I know there's a very notorious light novel series that just got like greenlit for an anime, and that one's about like rape revenge fantasy. It's just like gross and weird and I hate it. Just like, can we stop catering to the lowest type of human being, please?
Yeah. It's just, not my favorite. I think it's like, it's just there to like feed people's most destructive, awful urges too. Like, it's just this feedback loop of just consuming this awful, hateful shit and becoming more awful and hateful as a result, and then seeking out more of this awful, hateful shit, and it just continues, and I just don't like it.
Yeah. It's it's terrible. Conversely, some stuff that I would like to see more of, and am hoping we see more of in the coming year. I'm loving the female-led series that we're getting, both in shoujo and shonen, but namely our female-led fantasy. Again, 12 Kingdoms. Would love to see that. But stuff in that ilk, like Yona, has done great things for the industry, I feel, and I hope...
Yona, and I would say also Snow White with the red hair.
Yes, and I love them both, so more of the same, please, and thank you.
Yes.
I also...
Give me Colette.
I also really, I mean, we've seen just the huge expansion of the LGBT kind of genre over the last couple of years. We've talked about this before in our LGBT-focused podcast, but more from creators, and also more own voices. Manga, I think we've talked about that as well. I don't necessarily know how much of that is being produced in Japan, but we do have some, and some has been licensed. Boys Run the Riot, I'm super keen for.
Yes,
there's a lot of good stuff, I'm sure, out there, and I'm hoping that we see more of that being licensed and being released.
I feel like there's been so many romance series this year where you've got these like very loving established couples who there's like a very conscious effort within a lot of these series to establish very clear lines of consent and boundaries, and honestly like making consent and mutual respect sexy and like part of the appeal of the series, and I really love that trend. So more of that,
yes,
please.
Please and thank you. Give us that.
Not just in the straight stuff, but in the gay stuff as well. Seems to be, you know, a trend that is present all around, and I like it a lot. Historical series as well. Especially female-led historical series. I feel like we've seen quite a few of them. Those are nice. And I would say also, like, the dark, gross monster shonen is also a fun trend.
I also hope we see more classic shoujo getting licensed next year. We've had a couple recently, and I think classic stuff has... Like, we get drips and drabs here and there. I mean, the fact that Seven Seas has just licensed Lupin again is kind of, like, amazing. Yeah. But even, you know, some of the other stuff they have upcoming for their classics line is super cool.
Yeah, we're getting a Shotaro Ishinomori in English again.
And it's...
for the first time in forever.
Yeah, and it's super exciting to see that. Like, we've said this in previous podcasts, that, like, the manga market and industry has just become so popular, so well-sustained, that now these smaller markets, these smaller niches are being catered to, and it's super cool to see that, rather than just the same... boring isekai fantasy or Shonen Jump popular stuff being regurgitated over and over and over again.
Yep.
So my number 2 is another series that I only read recently. People have been talking about this series, or at least in my circle of friends and associates who read manga, this has had a very positive reaction from all of them. And I was wanting to read it for a long time, but didn't actually get the chance to until very recently. And that is Sweat and Soap, which is, again, a romance series.
Yes.
Between adults. Very loving, very communicative, and just really great. Just really great. I love this series so much. So this is the story of a young woman who works... she's... very self-conscious about her body odor. She used to be teased about her sweating as a child, and as such she's become quite obsessive with making sure that she doesn't smell. So she wipes herself down, she puts on tons of deodorant and uses a ton of soap and moisturizer and all these sorts of things to get rid of any lingering smell that she may have. And she has a
and she's very passionate about it too.
Yes.
About soap.
And through this, she's gained. She loves one particular brand of soaps, which she actually is working for the company for. She works in the finance section, and she just loves their products. She's really, really a fan of them. One day, while she is admiring the upcoming release of the whatever next season soaps are, she is, I guess, cornered by this guy, one of her co-workers who is in the developmental department. And he's like, you smell, like, oh my gosh, you smell. And obviously she's very self-conscious about this, but he clarifies that she smells amazing. He loves how she smells and just takes a big ol' whiff. And definitely gets, like, hugely inspired. He wants to continue smelling her because it will allow him to better the products for the upcoming season, because she discovers he is the person behind all of her favorite soaps, all of her favorite scents. And from there, they have this weird smelling relationship initially, but quite quickly there's a lot of chemistry between them, and their relationship turns romantic, and it's really good. It's so sweet. I've only read the first 3 volumes, but already the positive impact that these characters have had on each other, especially with our main female character, the amount of confidence that she's gained with having the reassurance of being herself and not having to worry so much about how, like, she still worries about how much she sweats and if she smells or not, but having somebody tell her, like, it's okay, and actually I really like the way you smell, and that's really attractive to me, has done wonders for her. And it's just really sweet and wholesome, and despite kind of the premise sounding a bit like fetishy of, like, oh yeah, this is the smelling romance, in a similar vein to, like, Mysterious Girlfriend X, where that has a really weird premise and kind of gross fetishy element. It's actually really heartwarming and sweet, and you love the characters together, and you get really invested in their relationship. I love this series a whole bunch. Yeah. It's so good.
It's so good. I love the main couple so much. I love, like, even the side characters. I love, like, the girl's, like, super supportive boss. And, like, the little chipmunk girl who's with the guy. I love how, like, her little arc as a romantic rival is resolved. Yeah. It's so sweet. And, like, we end up with some female friendship going on between the two of them. And, yeah, it's just... I really like the character designs. This is a seinen manga. It's actually a male mangaka, too, which is kind of interesting. Just not that common for romance series with a female main character. But it is a seinen manga, and it has a style that is quite, I think, different from josei without being alienating at all to people who like that style. I really like the designs of both of the main characters. It's just really distinctive. I find them both really cute. So, yeah.
They are really cute. I really like her brother as well, the chef. Like, I don't know. That whole arc it was great.
I would really like to have a brother who is a well-respected chef at a gourmet Italian restaurant and gets me seats there all the time.
I mean, yeah, obviously, like, why even have siblings if they're not gonna be useful to you.
Yeah, right? Right, Kyle?
Oh, your poor brother.
Love you.
No.
But you better land that ski lift job.
No.
Just kidding.
But not really. Let's be real. The joys of being an older sibling, am I right? But I also really like throughout the series, these aren't adults. They have an adult, physically intimate relationship, and the way, like, it's quite fade to black. You don't see much aside from, again, lovely sniffing. But even that, like, it is quite intimate, and it's just shown really caring. Like, you can tell how much these characters care about each other and are concerned about each other's well-being, and, you know, and for our female character, our main character, it's really her first serious relationship. She doesn't have a lot of experience because she has been so self-conscious her entire life, and how her now boyfriend is very aware of that fact and wants to, you know, make sure that they're at the same speed, and, you know, make everything good for her, make sure she's comfortable before just, like, barreling through to whatever he wants to do. And it's just really nice. Really nice story.
Especially because, like, he has this history of, he's a big workaholic. Obviously, like, the reason he's attracted to this girl at first is, like, work. Like, honestly, it's not even framed as, like, because of his smell fetish. It's framed as, like, because she inspires him to work more.
Yeah.
This man is all about work. So he's kind of had a series of failed relationships that ended because he was too into his job and not enough into his girlfriend. So I think you see him, like, making the effort to be, you know, extra doting and loving, and, you know, also responding to, like, how into the relationship she is. And yeah, you know, they're just, like, feeding off the love they have for each other, which is very sweet. They find confidence in each other, and I think that's great.
And again, like, the whole smelling, I don't know, pheromone, aroma aspect of it is, not only is it, like, she smells super good, and because our main male character, he has a very acute sense of smell, so he can pick her out of a crowd pretty easily. He knows when she's around because he can smell super well, which again plays into the smell fetish. But because of that, it forces them to communicate, because he can tell when, like, she's hiding her feelings, which is really great.
He can smell her sadness.
Smell her sadness and her frustration, and he can tell when she's faking a smile. Like,
and their sex is extra great because he can smell when she's happy.
And, like, it's cheesy and obviously, like, playing right into the whole gimmick of the piece. But it again forces these characters to actually communicate with each other. There's no overall, like, hiding of feelings and miscommunication and any of that other guff. And so these adults act like adults in an adult relationship. Like, it's really nice.
Wow!
Really nice! And not that common, unfortunately. More common this year, which, again, has been good, which is why we've highlighted it. But,
it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's really sweet. It makes me smile. My number 2 is a long time coming. Both my number 2 and my number 1, which, let's be honest, y'all know what my number 1 is. My number 2 is Ping Pong by Taiyo Matsumoto. One of my favorite creators. I think one of yours as well, G, right? Uh, Ping Pong, first experience with the story was the Masaaki Yuasa directed anime, which was incredibly excellent. Big fan of Matsumoto's other works. This has been, like, the holy grail Taiyo Matsumoto license that we've all been waiting for, and it's here, and the editions are gorgeous.
Yes.
Yep. Everything I could have wanted and more. This is a story about two high school boys named Peko and Smile, who they're childhood friends. They got to know each other through table tennis. They're both on the table tennis team at their school now. Smile is a very sort of kind of emotionless, they call him like a robotic type character, I guess. He is very awkward. He doesn't have a whole lot of passion for anything in particular, even table tennis. He calls it just a game. He plays it as though it's just a game, even though he has a lot of talent for it. And meanwhile, Peko is this very outgoing, to an annoying degree, very arrogant kid who knows that he's good at table tennis and wants everyone else to acknowledge it too, basically. He loves table tennis as long as he's winning. And when he stops winning, he doesn't love table tennis anymore. And it's sort of their journey with the sport, as well as some other characters. It's a pretty tight cast. Like, you're not... Obviously, table tennis is a one-on-one sport in the end, so it's mostly just a small handful of guys who get the focus, but it always comes back to these two, of Peko and Smile, and their relationship with each other and their relationship with the sport. Peko's getting very jealous of Smile, who kind of forms a bit of a closer relationship with one of his coaches, and ends up finding the first flames of a passion for the sport that he's never had before. And as a result, he starts improving very drastically, and Peko is very threatened by that. Because at the end of the day, Peko doesn't... What he realizes is that up until this point, he hasn't had any passion for the sport. He's just had a passion for being good at it. So they both kind of have to find why it is that they play table tennis, and what it can do for them. I guess it's a very typical sort of sports manga setup. It's a lot of themes that you see in sports manga, mixed in with a lot of the themes of youth and fear of growing up and confusion about growing up that you see in a lot of Taiyo Matsumoto manga. But told in a way that it really isn't like anything else. It's so good. It's so good.
The genius of Matsumoto.
Yeah, I kind of really appreciate that Ping Pong... You know, most of the sports manga that at least I've had experience with are about underdogs, right? Kids who start out not knowing anything about the sport, or, like, not being very good at it, or being too short, or too young to play the sport, but too anxious. But Ping Pong is more interested in exploring the insecurities of characters who are good at table tennis and are very aware that they're good at table tennis. But, like, where do they go from there? Yuri on Ice does this as well. And I always find it very compelling. You know, when you're already up there in the upper echelons, what do you strive for? You know? And, like, what do you do when you know that you're better than the way that you're performing? You know?
Yeah.
So, I love Ping Pong. The art, of course, is incredible. Taiyo Matsumoto is, you know, his style's very unconventional for manga. It's very much his thing. Nothing else looks like his stuff. But if you say that his art is ugly or bad, I will fight you physically out in the parking lot. Let's go. Ping Pong in particular, what I love about it is that it has such this strong pulsing rhythm throughout the whole thing. You can hear the table tennis ball getting hit across the net over and over again, just back and forth and back and forth. There is a sound to this manga, and it's just propels you through it. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's so good.
It is. It's phenomenal. Also, highly recommend the anime. It's wonderful, and keeps a lot of that, like, movement.
Dynamism.
Yeah. Thank you. It just captures everything that's good about the manga. Ping Pong is phenomenal. It's also, like, it has a lot of the, I guess, tropes or themes of a typical sports manga, but because of perhaps the length, but also the art style and how it, as you mentioned, like, it focuses on very characters that have already achieved a whole lot and you know, have excelled in the sport. It's not one that I inherently think that, like, you have to enjoy sports manga to enjoy, right? I mean, like, I am a big sports manga fan, but it feels there's an element to it that, although it makes it quintessentially, like, exactly sports manga, that is just done in a way that appeals to a wider variety of people, even if you're not one who, like, enjoys Slam Dunk or Haikyuu or whatever else. It's it's really, really good, and I will join you to fight anyone who says Matsumoto's art is bad.
Let's go. I'm gonna hit you over and over with ping pong balls. It's so human. The emotions and how tangled they get, but how heartwarming the story is in the end is just, like, it's so good. Especially, like, Smile's arc. Honestly, I feel like I relate to different characters at different points in the story, and every time I read it, it's someone different. But, like, I just love, like, Smile's arc at the end. He's a character who deals a lot with being so awkward. He's, I would say, pretty heavily coded to be on the spectrum. I've known a lot of people who are on the spectrum who've watched or read Ping Pong and seen themselves in him. But he is called, like, this robot. And Peko, like, I think he gets cut or something when they're a kid. This is a memory that keeps coming up.
Yeah.
And Peko, like, licks the blood and he says, hey, your blood tastes like metal. And that becomes, like, a rallying cry for him throughout the series as he learns to take pride in the way that he is. Because it's what makes him him. And Peko loves him for that, and his coach loves him for that. And yeah, like, it's so, I don't know, it's so empowering, I guess. Peko's superhero thing is good too. Taiyo Matsumoto is so good at just, like, finding these motifs for his characters that just, like, explain them in a word or a catchphrase, and
he's also like amazing, and we see this in his other series as well, but he really knows how to get to the root of truth when it comes to children. His child characters are so real. Like, they are actual children who have existed on this earth, which is why it is, like, so relatable. And I think, like, literally everyone in the world has been a child, right? So, like, you can
I haven't.
but you can attach yourself to these characters because they do feel like they are struggling kids, which typically are the main characters in his series. And it's the way he captures not only their struggles, but their imagination, their hopes, their reflection on themselves is just so perfect. It doesn't feel like a created fictional character that makes decisions because the story needs them to. It feels like the story organically has grown from how this child has grown and has experienced the situation around them. It's so good. It's so good. If you have not read Ping Pong, absolutely do it. If you haven't read Black and White or Attack on King Creek, do that. Sunny is wonderful. Go-Go Monster is wonderful. We have number 5 upcoming as well, recently licensed from Viz. Just read
Cats of the Louvre as well.
Yes. Just read all of his stuff. Just read it all.
All of it. Go. It's so good. And honestly, that's another thing I like about Ping Pong is just, like, you know, I've seen him write about younger kids in, like, Attack on King Creek and Sunny. I've seen him write about kids right on the cusp of puberty in Go-Go Monster. But it's nice to see his take on, like, specifically adolescence, with the teenage characters in Ping Pong who are really at a point in their lives where they're trying to find something that gives them purpose, and finding that in a sport, which is another classic sports manga thing, and just done so well here.
It's phenomenal. If you haven't read any of Masamoto's works, you really are missing out on one of the best artists, full stop, creators, full stop, around. Like, it's his work is so good.
And if you're put off by his artwork at first because it's different from what you expect from manga, just try to dig a little deeper. Just try to sit in it for a bit, read a little further, and see if it hits you. Would be my advice.
Yeah.
And if not, I'm waiting in the parking lot.
We will beat you up. Don't try us. We will beat you up.
To clarify, it's fine if it's not for you. But he isn't a bad artist. I will fight people on that. Yeah. So, I guess, do we want to answer another question before we get to number 1?
Yeah, we are at the last question. Before we get into the last question, I do want to that we have another list of favorites from this year from our good friend and one-time guest of the podcast, Aisha from Mama Loves Manga.
Fellow chaotic bi.
Yes. If you haven't listened to the episode where she guested alongside our other good friend Shay from Shay Geeks Out, that was our February podcast where we talked about romance manga. Double feature that one. Two titles or two podcasts to enjoy. But She had put a list saying that it was hard to choose her favorites for this year, so she broke them down into categories. So her favorite Yuri was I Love You So Much I Hate You, with How Do We Relationship as a close second. Her favorite BL or yaoi is Liquor and Cigarettes, which we spoke about. Shoujo romance was Love Me Not. Josei romance was one of my top 5 with My Androgynous Boyfriend. And her favorite tearjerker was My Broken Mariko, which was a phenomenal one-shot. Very heavy, very thematically heavy, but very hopeful as well. And that's a recent release from Yen Press. Really, really good if you haven't tried that yourself. Although I will say that it is very triggering, so perhaps it deals with a lot of heavy themes in relation to abuse, both sexual and physical, and abuse cycles. That's one of the largest themes. Suicide and and survivor's guilt as well. It's really good, but also not an easy read. So preemptive warning if you're going into it blind. Maybe look up a blurb, kind of find out what you're getting into before just jumping in, head first. But all great titles, all really good titles from a great year. But our final question for the podcast is from Zach from Uchu at Uchu and he asks, what manga are you each most looking forward to in 2021? I think I will say I'm, just as I mentioned, I'm really, really looking forward to number 5 from Taya Matsumoto. That was a recent license. That's super excited. Also, Boys Run the Riot. Super keen for that one, which is an Own Voices title about a trans masculine or trans boy who is very interested in fashion, I believe. Really, really keen for that one. There we have a upcoming Asumiku Nakamura title, Yuri, that I'm keen on, and there's so much good stuff has been licensed. So much good stuff has been licensed. Also, a bunch of stuff that I'm not interested in has been licensed, but a lot of really cool stuff has been licensed. And I'm sure there's a million more that I can't even think of right now. But, yeah.
Yeah, I forgot to look up answers for this one. But, I am definitely looking forward to, there's like a Moto Hagio one that's coming out with the little cat.
Little Leo.
I'm obviously looking forward to that, because Moto Hagio is all I care about at all times. That's the one that's coming to my mind. Also the ones that you said.
Mm. Oh, I'm also really keen for Seaside Stranger, which is or Umube no Étranger, the BL that's gotten a movie this year.
Oh, yeah.
So excited for that one, which I've read previously via the digital release that I think Renta put out, or I can't remember. But happy to have that one in print. Super cool.
There's so many that, are not coming into my head. But I am, a recent one that just got picked up that I'm really excited for. Actually, so excited I may or may not have actually picked up the first volume in Japanese to see what it's like. Because I love vampires. And I love the Taisho era. And I love theater. And where did these all come together? In Mars Red, which is about a secret government agency that's full of vampires, and they fight vampires. And there's a girl who's cross-dressing journalist in the Taisho era, and it's just so many of my buttons being pressed in this premise. It's also from the creator of Laughing Under the Clouds, who I really like their art style.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's based off of like an experimental theater piece, which was, from what I understand, a recitation drama, which is interesting. And it's also getting an anime. So, yeah, I'm excited for that one. Hopefully it's not trash. We're also getting The Summer of You, which I had forgotten about, but that's a very sweet BL that I've heard good things about. So, there's so much, though. And with that, shall we get into our number one?
Do you want me to go first so we can end with your number one? Because I think it's the, like, big one that we can talk about.
Sure.
And also the probably most obvious. So I'm going to go first with my number one. And again, just to reiterate from the beginning of the podcast, a lot of these titles, including Ray's title, would be on my number 5, but we didn't want to overlap too much. We don't want to talk about just 3 series through this list. So this one, but even regardless of if I didn't do that this one would be on my top 5, if not top 3, like, anyway. But this is Not Your Idol, a ongoing but sadly on hiatus shoujo series about a teenage girl who the year prior was part of an idol unit. She was in fact like the center girl, the main girl, and unfortunately, whilst she was at a meet and greet event, one of the people in the crowd, one of the people who came to shake hands with her, attacked her with a knife. And unfortunately, because of that, she's suffered a lot of trauma. She can't really trust people anymore, especially not men or guys, boys. And so she quits being an idol. She leaves her group. She leaves her, studio. And she enrolls as a normal high school girl in a different city. She's living on her own. And she completely changes her image. She's cut all of her hair off, so she's got short hair, and she only wears the pants of the uniform, which you are allowed to do at her school, but obviously she really sticks out because of that, because she is the only girl in the cohort to choose pants instead of the skirt, which is kind of a callback to the Japanese title of this series, which is Sayonara Miniskirt. And that's obviously a reflection on how she feels because of her attack. She is very obviously traumatized. She's struggling with trusting people again. But also she realizes and has experienced since her attack the trauma of being a victim, of people saying, and while she wasn't a victim of sexual violence, it's still that narrative of like, oh, you're just being a victim. Like if you wouldn't be a victim if you hadn't have been doing this, it's your own fault. You need to take some responsibility. Of course, if you wear short skirts, like, bad things are going to happen to you. Like, what do you expect? The victim blaming narrative of society, which unfortunately we know is very alive and well within the world and within wider society. But our main girl is struggling with this personal trauma, but she is slowly befriending a boy in her class who is part of the judo team, and he's really the only one who recognizes her he recognizes her as this idol, her idol self, because his younger sister is a big fan, but he also recognizes that she has a lot of trauma. She hasn't, like, her surly and standoffish behavior and personality is a serious thing, and her trauma should be taken seriously, because his younger sister was also a victim in her own right, and so he understands like that it's a very complicated process of healing, and you can't just get better because time has passed and people say for you to get over it. There's things, everyone heals on their own terms and in their own ways. And okay, so this is probably the most feminist, like, angry shouting at culture against that I've read, like, for manga at least, especially. The absolute amount of just perfect encapsulation of this victim blaming, of the hypocritical standards placed on young women, especially teenage girls, the toxicity of the idol culture, and the toxicity of celebrity just in general, and also this traumatic process, like the self-reflection and the understanding logically, like the acknowledgement of understanding logically that not all men or not all people who have hurt you in the past, like, not all men are going to hurt you, or not all, again, that quote unquote, like, oh, not all men are rapists. Like, of course, not all men are rapists, right? But just the fact that you have to clarify that is because you feel offended because you might be grouped into that, it's just done so good. But the acknowledgement from the victim, like, yes, of course not all men are rapists, but that doesn't mean that my brain logically is okay with, like, just hanging out with whatever guys because I should be over it and they're not the ones who hurt me, etc., etc. Oh, it's so good. I wax poetic about this series at every opportunity. There's only 2 volumes out and has been on hiatus since the 2nd volume came out in Japan, and it's painful to wait, but this is a must-read series. It is a must-read series. Full stop. Again, like with some of the other titles, or the title we just spoke about, My Broken Mariko, there's a lot of heavy themes, a lot of heavy, intense topics. So it may be very hard, very triggering for a lot of people, and if it's not suitable for yourself, totally fine. Not an issue. But I do think if you're not put off by that, if it's not too personally traumatic for you as a reader, you must read this manga. It is so good.
I really hope it comes off hiatus.
Yeah, it's painful, and it's such a cliffhanger as well. Like, the hiatus is it's a painful one. But I also, like,
now you know my Nana pain.
Yeah, pretty much. I really appreciated in this series, I mean, I've talked a bit about it already, but I really appreciate how our main male character takes what our main character says very seriously, and he recognizes that just because she's, just because she wears the boys' uniform, and just because she doesn't get along with all the guys in her class, and just because she seems strong and independent, and like she doesn't need anyone to protect her, doesn't mean that she's fine, or that she's over it, or that, it makes her a broken person. And recognizing that for fear, recognizing that her reactions and her coping mechanisms are still, like, very, very new. It hasn't been a huge amount of time since her attack. And also not being offended when she's not okay with how their friendship is going, that she has doubts, that she doesn't, like, immediately feel safe, that he doesn't get offended, that she, might be upset with him for perhaps illogical reasons. It's just really good. It's just really good. And there's, like, a larger mystery element to this, because we don't know who, like, the person who attacked her hasn't been caught yet, and there's, like, a lot of, like, weird stalking element to that, so there's sort of the thriller aspect of that, and it's just really good, and I also, again, really appreciate that a lot of the stuff, a lot of the most hurtful stuff comes from other female characters, like some of her female classmates, most notably one of her, like, classmates who, she's the one who is, like, the devil's advocate for, like, oh, not all boys are rapists, and, like, oh, like, I don't understand why girls get so hung up over this and that, and she's playing that, she's very aware of the game she's playing, and in order to stay popular, to keep her popularity, she's very manipulative and calculating, and it's just, again, like, it's not just sexist and hurtful and victim-blamey things don't just come from men, right? They come from everyone, but especially other women, because they're either not empathetic, or they don't understand, they don't take certain things seriously, which is why it was not nice, but, like, it was good to see that being portrayed, especially because when we're talking about high schoolers, this is very much like, you don't want to rock the boat, you want to be as popular as you can be, that sort of thing. It's just refreshing to see that acknowledged as, like, this isn't inherently a gendered issue. I mean, it is, but it's not just, like, one gender doing bad things and one gender being victims of these things, right? It's all ingrained in societal rape culture. And, yeah, I mean...
Yeah, it definitely sounds super good. I just can't deal with having only 2 volumes.
It's very painful. But if anyone is listening and you haven't read it and it sounds like your thing and you don't mind waiting because it's on hiatus and you haven't picked it up yet, do yourself the favor. Especially if you like feminist media, because it sure is that.
Mm-hmm. Not too common in manga, at least the stuff we get over here.
Mm-hmm.
Overtly feminist.
Yeah.
Media. There's a lot that, just doesn't have strong issue, like, you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean. There's a difference between, like, quote-unquote feminist-friendly works that just, like, won't make you angry reading them, and feminist works that are actively engaging with feminist ideas and feminist theory, and feminist talking points. And, one of them is a lot more common than the other.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure people at least those who are listening to this on the YouTube channel, that if you think feminism is a dirty word, just don't hang around here. This isn't your place. Like, this is... Yeah. You're with the wrong crowd. If you're listening to us and you don't like the idea of feminism, or you hate the word or whatever, just do yourself a favor and find somewhere else. Or maybe actively engage in why you think that, and perhaps reflect and learn and grow.
Maybe, perhaps, by reading Not Your Idol.
Yes. But yeah.
Last. Yeah.
Yeah. Want to save the best for last. Probably the most unsurprising entry on this list. Ray's number 1.
G very kindly let me have it. Because I am the 70s shoujo girl, and I love 70s shoujo. And y'all know what it is. It's the Rose of Versailles.
Yay!
By Ryoko Ikeda. Oh my god. Oh my god. Still not over it, and I have 3 volumes out of 5. So
I just pre-ordered 4 and 5 yesterday as a Christmas gift to myself.
Incredible. It's surreal. It's surreal. Yeah. This has been, like, Ryoko Ikeda, I mean, rightfully so, but she is so protective of her intellectual property. Notoriously so. She puts a high price on it, and she wants a release to be perfect. And so it's amazing that Udon was able to get the rights.
Yeah, I still don't know how
what
much
she eased up on. I don't know why, but man,
yeah,
feels good, man. Feels good.
And they're so beautiful. Their books are the Rose of Versailles books are just gorgeous.
This is one of the most important and influential manga of all time.
All time.
There's no way to overstate how important this manga is. If you read it, you'll be able to see shades of so many later series in it, so many later trends. It's just, yeah, it cannot be overstated. In terms of what the series is about, it starts in a very different place from where it finishes.
Yes.
It actually starts out as a story about Marie Antoinette, her various loves and losses, the stress of coming from Austria and moving to France, marrying someone she doesn't love, and eventually, her downfall as she becomes more materialistic and uncaring of her subjects. But it pretty quickly becomes the story of the character who was much more popular in the character popularity polls at the time, who is now one of the most famous heroines of all time. Marie Antoinette's loyal guard, well-respected general within the French army, Lady Oscar Francois du Georget. Right? You just have to sit there in awe of the name for a second. She is a handsome, cross-dressing heroine. I definitely feel like if the series was made now, she would probably be non-binary. She's very much not attached to, like, being a woman in particular. She's not particularly attached to being a man either. She's just Oscar. You know what? Any pronouns are fine, just put respect on the name.
Yeah.
And she is there watching this person who is very dear to her, Marie Antoinette, go down a very dark path, and watching the people of France turn against her and agreeing with them more and more, and, being trapped between what's right for France and what is kind to her dear friend. And, there's so much else going on. This is a sweeping historical epic that, with so many characters who come into the limelight. There's Oscar's childhood friend, who is very obviously pining for her. Andre. There's Marie, obviously. There's Oscar's, I would say her first sort of relationship in the series is with a girl named Rosalie, who has come from poverty, but it turns out that she's got, like, a noblewoman mother, who suddenly decides that she wants her back after killing her foster mother. So she's very, very angry at the aristocracy. There's so many moving pieces here. Fairmay as well, who is Marie Antoinette's lover, who Oscar's also pining for. It's a lot.
Yeah.
There's constantly just everything going on, but it's so fun to read. You definitely understand, like, why readers were so captivated back in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful. It's overwrought. It is every emotion all at once. Everyone's wearing beautiful dresses and suits. It's everything.
and it holds up super well. Like, it doesn't, I don't know, I feel like if you're not familiar or you don't read a lot of classic manga, it can be hard to get into classic manga, right? But Rose of Versailles doesn't have that issue. Like, it's just captivating.
Yeah. Once you know, I guess, allow yourself to get used to the artwork, which is very, I mean, the Rose of Versailles is what you think of when you think of, like, a 70s shoujo style. It just is the Rose of Versailles. Anytime you see, like, any anime or manga, like, parodying a retro shoujo style, it is straight up parodying the Rose of Versailles. Guaranteed.
Yeah.
So I know, like, for some people it can be, like, weird to see, like, these faces that are used as parody in modern manga expressing very sincere emotions in the Rose of Versailles. But once you sort of allow yourself to just kind of fall into it and fall into the drama, and fall into just the heightened emotion of it all, it is just incredibly, eminently readable. It is so much fun to read.
Yeah.
And Oscar is iconic in every way.
Honestly, like, I feel like even if you're not a 70s shoujo fan or you're not into classic manga, just based on, like, the influence that the series has had over the course of manga history, right, and manga as an art form, it's just, there's no way to be an anime or manga fan without having consumed in some form a reference to Rose of Versailles. Like, it's just impossible, right? And it's sort of like, for me, a must read. Even if you don't love it, even if it's not your typical thing, if you care about manga history, if you care about what is influential, and in Japan to this day, the influence of Rose of Versailles, you owe it to yourself to read it. It's similar in the sense of, like, it's probably a better idea to read or watch the film of Night on the Galactic Railroad, because there's just so much, like, reference to those works that if you're not aware of it, you don't notice it, but once you have opened your eyes to it, you see it everywhere. It's just part of general culture. And
yep.
Yeah.
I was making fun of it in our group chat, but, like, the used cell phone store down the street, just, like, here in Japan, just, like, illegally uses Oscar and Andre as their mascots. It's, like, that level of, like, part of the zeitgeist here.
Isn't it the longest running Takarazuka show?
I mean, probably.
Yeah, it's super.
I feel like when you think Takarazuka, you think the Rose of Versailles. I mean, you know, huge overwrought drama, everyone's in beautiful dresses and suits, and, you know, sexy cross-dressing heroine. Match made in heaven.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus, I mean, all-female cast, they're used to the queer. It's like part and parcel.
Everyone being vaguely bisexual. Except Rosalie. Rosalie's just gay.
Gay as hell. It's like fucking super gay. Yeah.
Yeah. The emotions I feel that this is finally available in English.
Mm-hmm. It's
amazing.
It's amazing. And I mean, we mentioned before we'd like more classic shoujo to come to English. But yeah, I like you said at the beginning, it's gobsmacking that we've finally gotten it after so long, considering Ikeda's protectiveness of this title. But also gobsmacking in a different sense of that we hadn't gotten it until now, right? Like, it's just...
Yeah.
Oh. The longest time coming ever. Like, just...
Yeah. Oh my god. The years that Udon, licensing the Rose of Versailles was just a joke.
Literally 5 years. Literally 5 years. Well, it was like 4.5 years before we saw the first volume. Like, it was a while.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, God.
But it's gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, I talk about, recommending series that you want to read to your library if they have a program for it. Rose of Versailles has a high price point to it, but I definitely think that if you have a means to recommend it for your library, you absolutely should. This is absolutely a series that any library with a manga collection should be happy to have. In terms of its historical importance and influence. It's just... And quality. I mean,
yeah.
also.
Also, yeah. I mean,
and the fact that it's, vaguely educational. It's about Marie Antoinette.
And I would suspect that this was probably sold. Like, I don't think Udon would have invested in it if they didn't think it would sell well, right? And I would presume that it has sold well because it's a highly anticipated title. It was a beautiful release, and at least within the manga community that I see, almost everyone, if not everyone, was buying it or has bought it. But I mean, just the testament that, like, again, we joked that it took 5 years for it to be released. The fact that it still had so many people highly excited for it, anticipating it, and buying it on release 5 years after the licensing announcement is just a testament to its quality and to how excited and important this title was for people.
Thank God. It's a Christmas miracle.
It was very touch and go for a while there, but we made it. But with that, I think that's our top five. Top five each of 2020's debuts, plus our whole slew of honorable mentions in a separate podcast, because we don't...
It only took one Return of the King.
Yeah, I mean, this is a long one. We knew it would be a long one. Our end of the year is always a long one, but especially for 2020, which had such an immensely amazing year in manga, despite the year itself being terrible. The worst. Literally the worst.
Jinx.
Yeah. So, I mean, and not only manga licensing, manga sales for 2020 are up. Again, because we're in the middle of a global pandemic, people are buying shit because they're stuck at home and they've got nothing to do except for watch Netflix and read books. And I presume a section of those books are manga. So, yeah, we've had a huge amount of growth within the hobby recently. And that is something to be thankful for as a fan. And a nice silver lining out of just the trash heap that has been the start of the new decade. But hopefully next year will be better. Hopefully 2021 we can come into with even more excitement and enthusiasm with our year wrap up. But before that,
you said that, and I just immediately pictured the meme of like the Sphinx face opening up to reveal the colossal titan underneath, and it just says 2021.
Oh God, no! I don't want to live in the eugenics world of weird titans, and I mean 2021. That series is ending, so I am keen for that.
That's one thing to be thankful. Podcast episode upcoming, maybe.
Yeah. Oh,
we keep joking about it, threatening it.
Believe us, folks. Attack on Titan one day will be done. Bakuman as well, and I'm sure plenty others.
Oh man, I'm willing to read Attack on Titan. I just don't know about Bakuman. I mean, I've read it. I just don't want to read it again.
Yeah, don't want to remind yourself. Give yourself an aneurysm. But yes, with that comes to the end of our end of the year podcast. I hope don't let the door hit you when you leave 2020, because, we're glad for it to be over. Not quite the end of the year, but let's hope the next one is better. But
I'll fight you in the parking lot too, 2020.
the mere collection of just everything that was 2020. Oh my God.
I'll fight the coronavirus in the parking lot. I'll throw ping pong balls at it.
I mean, hey, it's a socially distanced, safe way to fight. So
fight coronavirus.
But next month we are going to be doing another series spotlight, where we will be talking about the amazing ongoing seinen series Land of the Lustrous by Haruko Ichikawa. This is honestly like one of the most interesting, compelling series coming out right now. I love it on so many levels, and I cannot wait to just gush my love all over about it, because it's amazing. And hopefully
a lot of really interesting themes to talk about as well.
Yeah, it's incredible.
I've been itching to discuss.
And if you are someone who's watched the anime, which is wonderful, by the way, do recommend the anime. But if you've only watched the anime, haven't really dived into the manga, oh my gosh, so much has been going on, so much has happened, and the series evolves.
Foss, baby.
So much over the course of the 10 volumes. 11, which just came out, and we won't see for a while, but yeah, so look forward to that. And as always, I will be posting the tweet for questions once that gets a little bit closer on my personal Twitter, which, if you're not following, will be linked in the description down below, but is at collectingg, all one word, and that's GEE. If you are not following Ray on her social medias, including her Twitter and her YouTube channel, do that. Why are you not doing that? And yeah, I hope everyone has a wonderful end of the year. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever you celebrate, if you celebrate, and of course a fabulous new year in a safe, socially distanced way. Look after yourselves and celebrate that 2020 is over, and hope that people make smart decisions going into 2021, so it will stay over. Right?
Yep. No Titans.
No, no Titans. But yeah, so thank you guys so much for listening. As always, I am G from Simply G.
And I'm Ray. Bye.